Think your personal social media account is off limits to your employer? Well, this case might make you think twice about that. Hey everyone, we are back with another episode of Real Stories, Real Cases, and today we're talking about getting fired over your personal social media. So, we're going to talk about a case from a few years ago called Ellis v. Bank of New York Mellon Corp. Now, before you roll your eyes at the legal title, I need you to just stick with me here. This is one of those real situations that catches people off guard. Thought it would be a great example for us to talk about today. All right, so here's the deal. An employee who was a white female, and I only mention it because it does become important later in the case. She posted something on Facebook. It was on her personal account, it was off the clock, but she got in trouble for it. So essentially, what happened was the employee was commenting on a news story about a councilman who was arrested for driving into a crowd of protesters. Now, on this post, she made the comment that said, total BS. Too bad he didn't have a bus to plow through. This post was the post and her comment was public, and it actually identified her as the VP of BYN Mellon, right, which is a bank. So you might be thinking, wait a minute, if she posted this on her own personal Facebook account on her own time, what's the issue here? How can she get in trouble for that? So essentially, this post and her comment led to numerous complaints questioning whether the bank endorsed such views. The company went ahead and conducted an internal investigation, and then ultimately, from that investigation, they terminated the VP for violating its code of conduct and its social media policy. And basically, what they said was that her post was offensive, that it demonstrated poor judgment, it showed a lack of respect for others, it actually harmed the bank's reputation, and it encouraged violent behavior. And so, because of those things, it was a violation of their policies, and they terminated her. So, not surprisingly, the employee was upset and decided to sue for wrongful termination and reverse discrimination. Okay. So the employee argued that there were two other Black employees who also had posted controversial things on their social media, but they were never fired. And so the employee felt like she was being treated unfairly because she was white. So she brought forth this example that said, wait a minute, I did this and I got fired, but over here were two Black employees who did something very similar and they didn't get fired, right? But ultimately, the court ended up agreeing with the bank. And here's what happened. The court said that essentially, the company was well within its rights to terminate her, and the employee lost the case. So you might be thinking, Letitia, how is this possible, right? If there are other people who were doing what she did, which is posting something controversial on their social media, then why was she fired and not them, right? And that's really why we're talking about this case today. And it's a good example of how we need to really get into the details, right? Because the details of this case, like most cases, they matter. So let's talk about this a little bit more. Now, what did the court say? The court ultimately said the company had a clear social media policy, that the employee knew about that policy, and that her post violated that policy and could also damage the company's reputation. So that kind of takes care of the wrongful termination claim. But what happened to her reverse discrimination claim, right? Remember, we talked about that. She did one thing, somebody else, two other employees who were of a different race did something similar and they weren't fired. So, reverse discrimination actually occurs when a member of a majority group, in this case, the individual was white, claimed that they were being treated unfairly or less favorably because of their race, gender, and other protected status, right? And when that happens, that is a violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. So, for a reverse discrimination claim to succeed, the plaintiff has to usually prove one, that they belong to a protected class. And in this case, she did. White is a protected class under Title VII. Then they have to show that they suffered an adverse action. So the employee was fired, and so they met that prong. And then they also had to just show that they were not deserving of that adverse action, that there were others in outside of their class who were treated more favorably under similar conditions. And so in this case, those are the two Black employees, different class from her, who did similar things. And then also generally needs to show that the evidence was not of discriminatory intent, that the evidence is of discriminatory intent and not just a bad outcome, right? So here's what happened. The employee argued that she was discriminated against because she was white and that the Black employees who had posted controversial content were not punished. But the court said that those employees weren't in executive roles, which she was a VP, that their conduct wasn't comparable because their posts were less egregious and did not advocate for violence. Okay. And so, because the court found no evidence of racial discrimination, they upheld the termination based on the violation of the policies. So, you might be thinking, what about our freedom of speech? What about our freedom, to kind of say what we want and how we feel, especially on places like social media? The thing is, you do have freedom of speech, right? We all have freedom of speech. But that does not mean that we don't have freedom from consequences, right? And so in this case, you have to think about, does your post reflect poorly on your employer? Does it violate your employer's policies? Does it cause your employer any reputational harm? Because if those things are happening, then your job could be on the line. And that was really what separated her post from the other posts that the other Black employees had posted. And that's why her termination was upheld and ultimately her racial discrimination claim was dismissed. So remember, this isn't really about policing personal lives, but it is really about understanding that your online presence is still a part of your professional brand. So my tip for you, know your social media policy. Think before you post, especially about controversial topics. And then if you manage people or you represent the company publicly, remember that the standards for those roles are often high, right? And so make sure that as you are communicating that you're not representing your company in a negative light. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about this case today and how we applied it to our real world situations, especially in times like now where social media is just normal, right? It's a part of our lives. And there are constantly posts or comments or things out there that people are saying that really can have an impact on even their workplaces or where they work based on their comments and personal feelings. So that is our case for today. If you want to know more about real world HR law and you enjoy this kind of breakdown, please hit follow. I will continue to explain some of these cases. And like I always say, we try to talk about these and really make them plain English so that you can understand how to avoid ending up as one of these cases. All right. And if you know someone who may have enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and tag them, send this to them. Let them know about these episodes that they may be able to be helpful for them as well. And until next time, make sure you stay compliant and stay out of trouble and keep rocking with us. Continue to follow us, continue to connect with us. Leave us some comments below. What do you think about this case? Did you think the employer was justified? Did the court get it right? What are your thoughts? Let me know how you're feeling and what you think about this one below. Leave the comments below. And until next time, remember to stay compliant.